In a world painted across the sky, on islands that floated in an endless ocean of blue, life moved to the rhythm of the great song, a celestial melody that echoed through every stone, every leaf, every soul. It was a harmony that bound all things together. But for one young man, Kael, the song was not a sound. He was an outcast, deemed deaf to the world's music. Where others heard melody, Kael saw a silent symphony of breathtaking colors, a vibrant dance of light that only he could perceive. One day, a chilling anomaly appeared in the heavens. A patch of absolute nothingness. A silent black void that began to stretch and tear through the vibrant tapestry of their world. As it expanded, it devoured everything it touched, turning floating islands gray, lifeless, and utterly silent. The world watched in horror as one of the great isles, a jewel of the sky, crumbled into dust and vanished into the encroaching silence. Panic, a discordant note of fear, rippled through the populace. The elders, desperate to restore order, gathered to perform an ancient ritual. They sang with all their might, attempting to reinforce the fading great song. But their efforts were in vain. Kael watched, not with his ears but with his eyes, and saw the colors of their ritual turn sour, clashing, and chaotic. The ritual didn't just fail. It accelerated the void's growth. It was then Kael understood a terrifying truth: the old ways were broken. The song was dying, and its guardians were only hastening its demise. Driven by a desperate hope, he searched his family's long-abandoned home, a place he had avoided for years. There, hidden beneath a loose floorboard, he found it. A map, ancient and cryptic, left by ancestors who, like him, saw the world in a different light. The map pointed to a place of myth, a legend whispered only in hushed tones, the Loom of Echoes. He didn't know what it was, but a conviction settled deep in his soul. This was the answer. This was the only hope. As he set out on his journey, a small, shimmering creature of pure light materialized before him. It was an echo, a tiny, fading remnant of the original pure song. It recognized the quest in Kael's heart, and with a silent pulse of light, agreed to be his guide. The boy who could then hear the song and the last echo of its melody began their journey into the growing silence. Their first challenge was a city that had already fallen. The Silent City. A ghost town floating in a gray haze, its vibrant colors leached away by the void. Here the silence wasn't empty. It was filled with hollow, gaunt, colorless beings born from the void, drawn like moths to the vibrant colors of Kael's spirit. They were relentless, their touch draining the very life and color from the world. The echo, his tiny guide, pulsed with urgency, teaching Kael how to channel his inner colors, the very essence of his being. He learned to project his spirit's light, not just as a beacon, but as a shield to repel the hollows and a weapon to push them back into the nothingness from which they came. It was a terrifying dance of survival in a world devoid of sound. Just as they found a path out of the decaying city, a new threat emerged. Lyra, a zealous Song-Warden, clad in the rigid blues and golds of the establishment, confronted them. She was a prodigy, her ears perfectly attuned to the great song. To her, Kael's vibrant, shifting colors were not a gift, but a corruption, a dissonance that she believed was a plague upon their world. She saw his quest not as an act of salvation, but of heresy. In her eyes, the song didn't need to be replaced. It needed to be purified, stripped of all impurities like Kael. Their ideologies clashed as fiercely as their powers. Lyra tried to correct his colors with blasts of pure, rigid sound, but Kael, guided by the echo, used his fluid, unpredictable light to evade her. He escaped, but the encounter left him shaken. It wasn't just the void he had to fear. The very people sworn to protect the world were now his enemies. The map led them onward, to a place hidden beneath a sunken island, a secret kept for generations, the Sunken Library. Its archives were not filled with scrolls and books, but with crystalline tablets that shimmered with stored memories and knowledge. As Kael touched them, the history of the great song flooded his mind, not as a story told, but as an experience lived. He learned the shocking truth: the great song was never meant to be eternal. It had grown old, stagnant, repeating the same melody for eons until it began to decay from within. The void wasn't an invasion. It was a natural consequence, like silence following a song that has ended. And the Loom of Echoes, he discovered, was not a tool to simply restart the old music. Its true purpose was far grander. It was an instrument for weaving an entirely new song, a new reality. The final leg of their journey brought them to the Loom's doorstep, The final gate, a colossal, ancient automaton powered by the great song itself, stood guard. But with the song failing, the automaton was malfunctioning, its movements erratic and hostile. Its internal mechanisms were a massive, intricate puzzle of light and color, a lock that could only be opened by someone who could see the music. As Kael began to decipher the shifting patterns, trying to align the colors and rhythms to deactivate the guardian, he sensed a familiar, rigid presence. Lyra and her Song-Wardens were closing in, determined to stop him. The automaton thrashed wildly, a dying beast, while his pursuers were just moments away. It was a race against the decay of the world and the fanaticism of its protectors. Using his unique perception, seeing the flow of energy as a symphony of colors, Kael solved the final sequence. The giant automaton shuddered and fell silent, its lights dimming for the last time. He slipped through the gate just as Lyra's forces arrived, sealing it behind him. He was now in the heart of the void, a space of pure, unnerving silence. And there, floating in the center of the nothingness, was the Loom of Echoes. It was a magnificent, colossal instrument, yet completely silent, its threads waiting for a new weaver. As Kael stepped forward and placed his hands upon it, he didn't need a melody or notes. He began to weave with the colors of his own soul. He poured in the brilliant reds of his courage, the deep blues of his sorrows, the bright yellows of his hopes, and the warm oranges of his cherished memories. But as his new song began to take shape, the void fought back. It was not a physical assault, but a mental one. It flooded his mind with his deepest fears, twisting them into vivid, soul-crushing visions. He saw his parents, their faces cold and distant, casting him out for his deafness, for the flaw that had defined his lonely life. The vision shifted, and he saw Lyra succeeding. She had purified the world, but the result was a horrifying monochrome reality, a single monotonous color stretching to infinity, devoid of life, devoid of change. Then came the most painful vision of all. He watched his small, loyal guide, the last echo of the old song, flicker and fade into nothingness, its light extinguished forever. Despair washed over him. The colors of his spirit began to dull. His hands faltered on the loom. The void was winning. He was about to give in, to let the silence take him. But in that moment of absolute darkness, the real echo, his tiny companion, pulsed with a final brilliant burst of light. It sacrificed its own existence, shattering the illusions of the void with its last breath of music and light. The raw, pure energy jolted Kael from his despair. He saw not what he feared, but what he fought for. With a cry of defiance, fueled by the echo's sacrifice, he poured everything he had left into the loom. He completed his new song. It erupted from the loom not just as color, not just as sound, but as an entirely new form of existence, a symphony of light, melody, and feeling that washed over the void. It was richer, more complex, and more beautiful than the old song had ever been. The black, silent nothingness receded, chased away by the vibrant, dynamic creation. Life and color flooded back into the world, islands reforming, plants blooming in an instant, the very air shimmering with a new kind of magic. On a distant island, Lyra and her wardens stood frozen, watching the spectacle. They felt the new song not just with their ears, but with their entire beings. They saw the colors, the swirling patterns of emotion and life that Kael had always seen. In that moment, Lyra understood. She saw the beauty in the change, the life in the diversity of color, and the terrible error of her rigid beliefs. The world was reborn. Kael, once the outcast, the boy who was deaf to the world's music, was now its architect. He had not just saved his home. He had given it a greater gift, a richer existence where everyone could finally see the colors of the song. He was no longer alone. He was the composer of a new dawn. Thanks for watching this story unfold. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of our next adventure. See you next time.